Hi, it's Bryn here. Welcome to my final project. So, I have a question for you. Have you ever felt like the world was spoiled? In this story that I will be talking about, there's two teenage girls that decide the world is spoiled. And if the world is spoiled, why can't they be too? Sorry, y'all. I'm gonna stutter through this. Let's get into it. Did you guess it? It's Daisies, a Czech New Wave film. Banned at the time about two girls, Marie 1 and Marie 2. They go about causing chaos around them. They go on dates with older men and use them for food and such. They prank and dance around, cause messes, and manipulate the systems around them to get what they want. And because of this and other things I will go into, it is known as a feminist film that is notable for its effects on the Czech new wave cinema and the cultures around it. But to talk about Daisies, we should discuss a little bit about the makers behind it. Věra Chikatilova was the director of this film. She was a Czech filmmaker and a key figure in the Czech New Wave. Known for her avant-garde and experimental style, often poking fun at the male ego, sexual tendencies, and patriarchal hypocrisies. She became popular when Czech was under the Soviet rule, graduating high-regarded FAMU, the Film and TV School of the Academy of Performing Arts in Prague, often mentioned as the birthplace of Czech New Wave. Czech New Wave. Wow, I may pronounce things wrong. Don't hold it against me. She was the only female filmmaker to be in part of the Czech New Wave, the 1960s cinematic movement born out of FAMU. After graduating in 1962, alongside other notable filmmakers such as Milos Forman, Věra began her film career commenting on the corruption and censorship of the Czech socialist regime. Interestingly, she refuted the feminist label, but her work has often been categorized as women's cinema because of its presentation of women's lives and its anarchic, that's a word, view. Daisies was her most successful film, though it was initially banned by the Czech government in 1966. And in 1967, it received the Grand Prix at the Bergamo Film Festival in Italy. Esther, I really can't pronounce her last name and I'm sorry, was the costume designer and co-writer and is quoted for being the Czech New Wave's Renaissance woman by a writer with jobs such as costume, set, and prop designer, screenwriter, and director. She contributed to many notable films of the Czech New Wave, as well as Daisies, A Report on the Party and Guests, Witch Hammer, and Valerie and Her Week of Wonders. And apparently, these films are celebrated for their bold political commentary and anarchic stance. She has been mentioned by the source previously mentioned as highly unappreciated. Now, a little background, because we haven't been doing that, apparently. During the occupation, she was involved in anti-Nazi resistance and experienced imprisonment and forced labor. During the time of Stalin in the communist era, she kept her freedom from politics by doing manual farm jobs. Later, in her mid-50s, she did something. Woo! Began as a costume designer and set designer for the theater, where she held status because she avoided talking and working on political plays of the era. She married New Wave director Jean Numek, and this relationship was very significant artistically and personally for her. And over the course of the 1960s, they would get married, collaborate on multiple projects, and get divorced. This relationship was said to be tumultuous, but mutually and equally admiring. Now that we've discussed some of the creators behind the film, let's take a deeper look into the actual film itself and some artistic expression and viewpoints that make it stand out in its field. And make it what makes Daisies a new wave film? I don't think you can see it, but it's there, and it's did a little spin. Starting with the two main characters, the Maries, and the actresses that play them. Not going to be mentioning the Maries' names because I don't want to butcher them, but they exist. There's Marie 1 and Marie 2. And the actresses playing them weren't professional actresses before. Yeah, crazy. But the time of filming, these two women had not been in any other professional work. However, after Daisies, they did both go into other films. Less notable, I believe, because I wasn't able to find much on them. I'm pointing off screen, it's because there is somebody who was very kind to help me. So that being said, the Maries. Who were the characters? Wow, look at my magic. Were they friends? Were they sisters?
We were roommates.
Were they lovers? Or were they maybe the same person, split into two different representations? Their unnamed relationship has been debated. Oh, in one scene, it is mentioned briefly that one of the Maries, calling out the other with the name sister. I believe this unnamed relationship adds to the characterization, or lack thereof, making them of this newly developed female archetype. They could be anyone, breaking social stereotypes with ultra-feminine style and naivety, mixed with chaos and impulsivity. What? I just want to take a moment. Okay, moment over. The sets and avant-garde cinematography and editing add a lot to this film and the meanings behind it. There is war imagery and warlike chaos, explosions in a literal sense, and explosions of color, material items, and clutter, as well as excess food and gluttony. There is also a theme of 2D spaces that adds a kind of facade and dreamlike quality to some sequences. And by the way, here is a bit of background information. I don't know if you can see it, but hopefully you can. The set designer, Carl Lear. Woo! Okay. Here are some of my favorite editing and cinematography moments that stuck out to me, and why. In this scene, it is the one on the train, and I like it because it almost shows time passing, and it's very interesting to me how time works in this film and the passing of time. So this shot that's very quick and colorful, in your face, kind of warps time, and I like that. These images show up in the beginning, in the beginning credits, and it shows some kind of machine and cogs working. I like it because it feels like it's a nod to the political machine that the film is critiquing. Ooh, explosion! This is an explosion that is, I think, seen in the beginning. Yes, the beginning. And along with the machine. there are some other explosions and war-like imagery, which ties in with the film. Yeah, you have to click. Click, 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 click. These shots are little tiny like glimpses, pictures that are kind of added really quickly in this interesting way. And during these scenes, like I said, it's almost as a transition or a cut, where these images flash on the screen. There's flowers, butterflies, and other various images flashed in a fast clip. And I say that this could be adding to the dream-like or not really reality of this film. And it kind of takes us out of the film, because usually films are shot as like full-on things with only a few cuts. And these are just images that... So it kind of takes us out of the film while we're watching. And I think it's really cool. It also shows kind of more of that like explosion of color. Ah. Woo! So these shots are little filters where the lighting has changed, and it also is making it clear that we are watching a film. And we're almost watching it crack and crumble along with the destruction that these two women cause. Now watch this genius little edit I made. Wow, look at the apple. I'm not editing this.
I feel like that makes it more on theme.
This is my art.
To talk about sets, I want to mention a few of the designs that clearly add to the theme of the film. The first one that I will go into is the Garden of Eden, the garden scene. In the beginning of the film, where the Maries are catapulted into a garden that is clearly representing a sort of Garden of Eden. This could be interpreted in many different ways, but we see this scene where the Maries are contemplating taking a bite from the apples on the tree. This has a correlation between the biblical story of Eve, and Eve is seen as this rebellious, provocative figure. So you can say that this scene is setting the two characters in this feminine illustration and the ideologies that seem to follow that. And we see them engage in this supposed sin with the apple, which is also featured in many other scenes throughout the film that I'll show you. Another thing that I want to add is the background on screen, which gives a sort of 2D type feel, almost like a painting, which fits in with this idea that we are not seeing reality. We're seeing more of a dream or ideal sequence that is not really happening. Some other sets. I just like this one, honestly. It's more of the garden theme. This is the room that they're in, where you see it one time in the beginning. There are leaves, and you see the apples on the bed. So that's pretty interesting. Ooh, burning fire. This one, which feels more interactive, shows them burning the set around them, which one of them saying, "We are on fire," pointing out their destruction and who it's maybe affecting. We can also notice that they are burning meat, which is very interesting, because I'll talk about it in a second. Meat! Wow! Meat. What does it mean? Well, it has a phallic meaning while cutting the sausages, but also mentioning this reference of the feminine body as seen as meat. You can see this right here as they are wrapped in newspaper and twine. And this could be a representation of how you might wrap food, more specifically, how you might wrap meat. And they are in that scene lying on a dinner table. Or in this scene, where one of the Maries briefly label the other as meat, while she brushes off and says, "Only fruit now," and starts cutting up, you could say another phallic object, a banana. Woo! Fashion. So fashion and styling plays a role here. We talked about the dining table before, but I want to share some other of my favorite moments that relate to fashion, because you can tell I love fashion. So, one fun moment was the fashion show, shown here. That was cool.
We did it.
Fashion show, where they danced and walked along the dining table in a curtain and their slips. A big nod to the co-writer and the costume designer, but also the goofiness of the fashion industry, probably. Wow. In this photo, a farm scene, they walk around in silly wire and farm stuff on their head, and they're walking around like it's a fashion walk, like a catwalk. And they are also really trying to get the attention of the farmer. And when that doesn't work, they parade around town. And so in different contrasting doors, all posed and poised. But the fashion of these scenes, and honestly the whole film, I find very alluring. It adds to the fun flair with their messy hair, their big eyeliner, the 60s, 70s mod baby doll dresses. I find it all really adds to their characters and the messages behind them. After all of this, it was banned? Yep, it was banned. Why? Well, the reason they picked was food wasting. So the food fight that happened, where they walked all over the dinner table, really messed up the government then. Woo! Explosions. This scene at the end really strikes me. More war imagery plays as the words, "This film is dedicated to those who get upset only over a stomped bed of lettuce," which is very interesting when you think about how it was banned because of a food fight.
Pretty crazy.
Which is why this scene strikes me more.
I keep pointing to the wrong places. Woo!
Disco.
What was so upsetting about this film? Was it really the bed of lettuce? Now ask yourself. Is the world really spoiled? And what are we gonna do about it? The end.